Technology. He at Indira Gandhi Institute of Child Health, Bangalore. Sir is a senior consultant in pediatric endocrinology of Sagar Hospital, Tilak Nagar, Bangalore. His present affiliation is the chairman of Changing Diabetes in Children. This covers around 22 centers serving 4,000 children with type 1 diabetes mellitus. And Sir has been awarded the ESP, Endocrine Society and Pediatric Endocrinology International Outstanding Clinician Award in 2018 and APPS Honorary Lifetime Award for 2012. Over to Professor Raghupati.
Good evening, everybody. It gives me great pleasure to be back in Tamil Nadu, at least virtually. And I've had such fond memories about my time, my life in Tamil Nadu.
Sir, excuse me, can you be a little louder, sir? A little louder. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I'm extremely grateful that I'm getting another opportunity to be in Tamil Nadu virtually, where I spent all my life in Vellore, and after my retirement for a number of years in Coimbatore as a visiting consultant. And thank you for inviting me. And without any further ado, I think I'll start off my topic. And I completed my endocrine training in 1986. 10 years later, I saw this paper and it caught my attention because even 10 years after my training, I was still struggling to treat children with growth hormone deficiency because of its non-availability. It was not freely available. And you may all know that we were using only pituitary-derived, pituitary-extracted growth hormone from cadavers. And it was so difficult, and this was only practiced in Western countries and certainly not in India. And subsequently, growth hormone became available. And even today, I'm struggling to treat children with growth hormone deficiency because of it's so expensive. Even though the high costs involved has steeply fallen now, even middle-income families in our country today find it very difficult to afford this treatment. So will we be able to produce growth without growth hormone? That's why this title caught my attention. It's almost like asking, can I get a salaried job without doing any job? And so I took this paper and I read it, and you can see it's dated 1996. And he's talking about this phenomenon being known for almost 30 years, even before that. So how did it happen? How did the concept come in? And I found the conditions in which you can get normal growth without administering growth hormone, even though they are growth hormone deficient. And the patient who caught their attention was post-craniopharyngioma surgery. And a number of patients had been reported by that time. And all of them had craniopharyngioma surgery. And subsequently, a number of reports also arrived on the scene where they described cellular, supracellular, and hypothalamic disorders with multiple tumors only. Most of them are tumors. Then, my interest was deflated. I'm not dealing with tumors because in children, as you all know, tumors are not very common, but short stature is very common. Growth hormone deficiency is much more common than this. And so I was thinking, what is the idea? Then the author goes on to explain that in fetal life, we know growth hormone doesn't play a big role. And the fetal growth factor is often thought to be insulin because hyperinsulinemic infants of diabetic mothers are large. You all know that. And hypoinsulinemic infants, as in pancreatic agenesis or leprosonism, they are supposed to be very lean and uh, not well grown. Their growth retarded. We all also know that obesity, obesity, just now Shaila was also saying, they are definitely taller than the 50th centile, and they show a concomitant increase in height velocity in association with acceleration of epiphyseal maturation also, that is advanced bone age. However, ultimately, obese children will stop growing in height prematurely, which fits in with their degree of advanced epiphyseal maturation. And obesity-induced hyperinsulinemia is often the cause. We also know that in endogenous obesity, such as Cushing syndrome, they present with short stature. And here, these are the cases that were described first. You can see post-craniopharyngioma resection, the child has put on weight enormously, and that has helped him to grow also. And so the clinical situations I've already told you about obesity and all that. But there is one line here which says otherwise normal children. That's what was interesting to me. And then I read up about the proposed mechanisms for growth without growth hormone. And I've mentioned these already. And there are so many other hormones like prolactin, growth hormone variants, IGF-1 and 2, and several growth factors. They were all described, but it still didn't help me. How can I treat children without growth hormone? And is there a shortcut? And that's what all the parents will ask you when you say growth hormone therapy is what is required and you have to treat for this number of years. They will say, I cannot afford. Is there any other treatment, alternative treatment, they'll ask. But even in 2003, in the 21st century, there was this paper which talked about growth hormone uh, not being given, but growth achieved. And the growth pattern and final height of 5 patients were described in this paper. And they all had idiopathic combined pituitary hormone deficiency. And I must also tell you, when I talked about the other cases several decades ago, they didn't even have proper growth hormone assessment techniques. But in this paper in 2003, they had all the advanced technology. They assessed or assayed growth hormone and proved that it was not only growth hormone deficient, all multiple pituitary hormone deficiencies were also described. And but still, these children have grown quite well. My slide is, yeah, sorry. And these are the 5 patients they have described in this paper. And you can see all of them have grown quite well. Of course, they received thyroxine, hydrocortisone, and even gonadotropins and all that. But growth hormone, though it was deficient, growth hormone therapy was not given. And all these 5 patients have improved. Why did they improve? How did they improve? They don't know. At the end of the uh, paper, the author still says the reason still remains elusive. So I might have tempted a lot of people to attend my lecture saying growth without growth hormone, and you might have thought I'm giving an alternative therapy or something like that. But I'm sorry, I have to disappoint you. But my idea was to tell you that where children can be helped, where they can be picked up, diagnosed, and we can, by just assurance, we can help them to grow. Okay, I'll come to that in a little while, but in general, normal growth in children is a highly complicated process. And because it involves the interaction of genetic, nutritional, environmental, and hormonal factors, predominantly growth hormone, but there are other hormones also which are important in growth. And in growth hormone deficiency, there is definitely growth retardation, short stature, delayed bone maturation, and reduced growth spurt during puberty. So, in isolated growth hormone deficiency or combined deficiency, uh, these are the hormones that are deficient, and these are the ones which need to be uh, looked at and treated. And evaluation of short stature, all of you know. And I wanted to make this slide a little less complicated by showing you that anybody who has got a height uh, less than or more than 2 standard deviation below the mean for age, height velocity less than 5 centimeter per year, and height more than 2 standard deviation below the mid-parental height. Those people are the ones who require to be investigated, and we need to rule out simple things like hypothyroidism and endocrine causes as well as GI causes. And we need to also rule out whether they are disproportionate. And if they are disproportionate, you know it is skeletal dysplasia. If they are also dysmorphic, it may be things like Down syndrome or Turner syndrome. So that leaves us with the proportionate children who are not dysmorphic. And again, there is a large chunk of endocrine conditions, which we will not deal with today. But there is an equally large proportion of cases which come under the category of idiopathic short stature. And the two main categories which are included under idiopathic short stature are constitutional delay of growth and puberty and familial short stature. And they both have height velocity more than 5 centimeters or 5 centimeters, and they are growing normally, but at a lower centile when compared to the others, their peers. And in constitutional delay of growth in the and puberty, the bone age is delayed. Whereas in the case of familial short stature, the bone age is normal and their predicted height is equal to the mid-parental height. And now I'll come to the case history of my patient, who's a 12-year-old boy, and the parents were both doctors, and they were referred for the concern of poor growth to me, and he had no sign of puberty, whereas he was worried that other children in his class were already having facial hair and all that. But he had no other complaints. His birth weight was 2.5 kilos, and it was no significant factors in his past history, and he was studying quite well, and he was a very active child, playing basketball, and he was a taekwondo black belt candidate. And there was no family history of short stature, by which I mean nobody was less than 5 foot. But mother herself was just 5 foot. And father was quite tall at 176 centimeters. And mid-parental height was 176 centimeters. And the father, on repeated questioning, he finally came up with the history saying that he was short in school and he sat in the front 2 benches always, and he had late onset of puberty. And he was growing late, and after the onset of puberty, which itself was delayed, he grew suddenly and reached the present height. And you can see that he is 176 centimeters, which is quite good. And I was also digging into the family history when he said that his father also gave a similar kind of a history. And that was a very, very useful clue to me. And I'm sure all of you have guessed by now that the diagnosis is not growth hormone deficiency, but it is constitutional delay of growth and puberty. And when I examined, he was a very alert, active boy, and his height was in the less than the third centile, and his weight was in the 10th centile. He had no dysmorphic features, proportionate, and he was prepubertal. Testis was 3 ml, and he was not hypogonadotrophic, but he had appropriate uh, testicular size for that age, although I would have expected him to enter into puberty at this stage when his testes should be 4 ml. Systemic examination was normal because parents are both doctors, and mother being 5 foot, she was very concerned and she kept a meticulous growth chart, which was very useful for me. I mean, I always hope that parents will have some growth charts, but they never have any previous charts, even though they might have gone to the doctors, and quite a number of pediatricians have recorded their heights, but they will never come up with anything like that. And this boy had a height velocity of 5 centimeter per year, and screening investigations were all normal. His bone age was 10 years, so there was a delay of 2 years. And these are the laboratory investigations which I had done, and these are the ones which are required in a patient with short stature. All of them were normal. I didn't bother putting all the values and straining your eyes. The bone age, I told you, is a regular investigation that we do, and it was two years behind his chronological age. Karyotype we don't do because he's a boy, and skeletal survey was not required because he did not have any such abnormality. And this is the growth record which the parents had kept, and I could make a beautiful chart with this. And you can see that he's growing all along in a normal fashion with a normal height velocity and close to the regular centile charts. And these red dots indicate bone age, which was always delayed by around 2 years. And as he was growing, I mean, I wanted it every year when they're doing it so nicely. He came to me at the age of 10, I'm sorry, 12, which is here. And they had one X-ray previously, but because they are doctors, they know that exposure to X-rays are not good. They didn't want me to do many. And here, when the gap reduced to 1 year, they stopped. And he has already reached 175 centimeters, which is very good. And you can see that the mid-parental centile is here, and he's even better. And he had delayed puberty, and that gave him a good start to grow faster, and he has reached the normal height potential. And hence, this is a case of constitutional growth delay and puberty, and it's a happy ending. No money involved, no treatment, no daily injections, but he has achieved his normal growth potential. This is a very common condition, but we need to take the history and find or establish the fact that the height velocity is normal. Constant, regular growth hormone, growth monitoring is very important. And only when they come regularly like this, we can assure them, and you can also be sure that this is not something which requires very expensive treatment or any treatment at all. We just want him to lead a healthy life with normal exercise and so on, and he will grow. And I just complain that parents don't keep any height record. I just wanted to share with you a grandfather's record of his 3 grandchildren. Every year on the same date of the year, he has recorded And he has even calculated the height velocity. Can you see that? He was so useful, and I had to convert it into centimeters to draw the growth chart of this patient. I wish all the parents will be like this. And this is the patient's chart, and we have made a diagnosis of constitutional growth delay and puberty. So my appeal to you today is to recognize this. And this is, of course, done by exclusion. We need to make sure that if the child is growing properly, sometimes they are worried, and you will have to demonstrate to them that the child is all right. And some parents are very over enthusiastic, and they expect their child to be 6 foot all the time. That's not possible. So uh, if the growth failure is defined as more than 12 years in boys and more than 10 years in girls, if they are having growth failure, you need a very careful medical history, family and past medical history, and chronic conditions uh, need to be ruled out, like malnutrition and recurrent illnesses and so on. And consanguinity is also equally important. We need to take birth history to rule out short for gestational age, prematurity, and so on, because they can also affect the growth. And abnormalities of fetal growth and perinatal complications, and even the history, as I told you, about the timing of puberty by the parents or first degree relatives. Sometimes it may be a cousin, uh, even mother's first degree relatives, and mother or father. And those things are very important to uh, confirm the diagnosis of constitutional delay of growth and puberty. It goes without saying we should do a complete physical examination to rule out any dysmorphic features, abnormal body proportions, and pubertal staging. That's very important also. And if we do all that, it is quite easy for us to make a diagnosis of constitutional delay in growth and puberty. Some of these children who are short are affected psychologically because of bullying at school, discrimination faced by them in their atmosphere, and those also have to be elicited by us. And it's very important to obtain all previous growth data, but unfortunately it may not be available. If it is available, we should mark them on the appropriate chart. Here again, I would like to appeal to all the pediatricians that we need to look at growth and also plot them on the growth chart. And all of you do weight recording when a patient walks in, but height is not regularly done. But there are some who are very, very meticulous, and they help the pediatric endocrinologist. Now, in contrast, this is a case of familial short staging. And here again, you can see the growth velocity is quite good, normal, but they have only a reduced family potential, and so they can only reach that much. And here again, no treatment is required, and even if you treat, you're not going to achieve much when the genetic influence is so strong. And I want to just show you, this is the height velocity chart. And if you see, that's the normal height velocity, which is associated with puberty in girls, and the next one is in boys. And the third one, C, marked C, is the constitutional delay in growth and puberty. So the puberty is quite markedly delayed, and uh, this needs only observation as long as there is no systemic abnormality. And the next chart shows you how a child with growth hormone deficiency will fare. They do quite well in the beginning, and then they grow for a while, then flatten out. And this growth chart plotting itself can give you a diagnosis straight away. And I just put up some differences between CDGP and familial short stature, which is also called genetic short stature. And as I told you, the birth weight, length, and height velocity are all quite normal. Initially itself, in the first year itself, they show a catch down growth. Both of them show a catch down growth, unlike growth hormone deficiency, where they grow quite normally in the beginning, and then they tend to flatten out or cross centile downwards. And they always have slow height velocity, whereas these two conditions, which are classified under idiopathic short stature, they have normal height velocity. And when you plot them, you have already seen that in CDGP, they are close to the third centile, whereas in familial short stature, they may be quite markedly below the third centile. And in CDGP, the puberty is late, whereas in familial short stature, it is normal. And bone age delay is always characteristic in CDGP by about 2 years, whereas in familial short stature, bone age is always equal to the chronological age. And the final height reached is quite normal or even higher. I have seen some of the CDGPs growing up to 6 feet also. And you saw in my own patient, he has exceeded the mid-parental height prediction that we made. And in the case of familial short stature, the final height is only around the third centile or just above the third centile according to the mid-parental height. The nutritional status is adequate. They are both healthy and active, and there is no problem there. Whereas in growth hormone deficiency, they may have a bit of lethargy, although it's not always, but there may be some signs that they are not strong as the others. And whenever you are faced with a situation like this, especially in CDGP, they are usually brought for the absence of puberty, not so much for short stature, although both can be there. The parents bring them, most often boys. In girls, CDGP is a bit rarer, but it can happen in girls also. And when they come at this stage, in case there is any doubt or there is no family history of CDGP, you may have to investigate them with growth hormone stimulation tests. And in this peripubertal age, you should do primed growth hormone stimulation test to avoid misdiagnosis of growth hormone deficiency. I just wanted to remind you about that. And in SGA, the majority will catch up. And I mean, Western figures are 80%, 90%, and so on. But in our setup, it doesn't always happen. But some of them may not catch up at all. And especially if they are also preterm, the catch up rate may be a little less. And so, how do you treat constitutional delay of growth and puberty? Only treatment that is required is to provide reassurance that growth and pubertal development will occur. And this is a case where you do masterly inactivity and watchful expectancy. The final height will definitely be normal, and it is relative to the parental heights or even higher than the MPH. And the history of first degree relative getting affected is very, very important. And In some cases where the puberty is severely delayed, we can give short-term sex steroid therapy. And that is done only the if the bone age is above, sorry, this has been reversed. If the bone age is 12 or more, that's a typing error here. Only if the bone age is 12 years or more in boys, then you can give sex steroid therapy just to give a booster kind of a induction. 50 to 100 milligram testosterone monthly in boys for 3 to 6 months. And if the pubertal signs appear and they progress even after you stopped treatment for 3 months, then you confirm the diagnosis of CDGP. And on the alternative, you can try oxandrolone also. It's a weak androgen, as you all know, and it has got greater metabolic activity than androgen property. And so it can be given both in boys and girls. As I told you, CDGP is rare in girls, but oxandrolone can be used in girls in case the delay in puberty is quite dramatic. And we can give ethyl estradiol or as an alternative conjugated estrogens, which I have mentioned here. Again, just like in the case of testosterone, if this um, uh, estrogen therapy helps them to go into puberty, and even after you stop the treatment, if they continue to remain in puberty, that means you have confirmed the diagnosis of CDGP. Here is a patient who has been treated a little longer, about 13 months. This is the period of oxandrolone therapy, and you can see that he has grown quite well, although his bone age remained backward, and the gap is narrowing there, and he is coming into the normal range. So long-term growth hormone treatment is not useful to improve the final adult height. We need to think of simple, effective, and cheap androgen treatment, which will give you quite good results. Some children may present earlier itself, even they are identified even before the delayed puberty is a concern. And in such cases, oxandrolone can be used, but unfortunately, it's not freely available now after the misuse by Olympic athletes or international athletes. We say that CDGP is a normal variation of growth and development, but it has got its own psychological and physical consequences. And one common finding is the short sitting height. How does that happen? Normal vertebral growth occurs at an early age in general, and this may not be achievable in children with delayed puberty. So the sitting height definitely is affected, and the proportions may be a little out of place. Although the final adult height is not increased with androgens in boys, with the CDGP, if you bring the timing of puberty into the normal range, that might permit a greater final stature than with extremely delayed puberty. Waiting, you may lose out on this score. And bone mineral density, there have been some reports, but generally everybody agrees bone mineral density is not affected in CDGP. So therapy in CDGP should be based on emotional and psychological impact, not on oxological parameters. Height velocity is very important. If it is normal, you just wait. And early treatment may be warranted if there are psychological reasons. And that is to potentially minimize, there is some physical advantage also, because it potentially minimizes the segmental body disproportion that accompanies significant pubertal delay. Now, what do you do for familial short stature? I have said that there is no treatment required. And here, people have tried treatment, but growth hormone therapy in one study showed only a marginal increase in final height by 2.5 centimeters. Here, it should not be given also. And it did not justify exorbitant cost and the hazards of long-term treatment. And we are not able to do a proper study because of insufficient numbers, lack of controls, different doses of growth hormone, and maybe there are some underlying pathological conditions which are remaining undiagnosed. Ultimately, FDA has not approved growth hormone treatment for this condition, and at the moment it remains an off-label use only. The psychological causes again may be exaggerated because it's not universally always associated with psychological issues. And there was a study in the UK where they did a community study, and they found, they picked up all the short stature children and they did a community study. Whereas the psychological issues are usually seen in the clinic patients. Whereas in the community, no definitive cognitive, psychosocial or maladaptive dysfunction was noticed. So this may vary from individual to individual, and psychological issues are not always a must. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that wonderful presentation. There are a few questions in the chat box, sir. Dr. Mahadevan has asked the efficacy and safety of biosimilar growth hormone in Indian children.
We have the equally good results, so we can use that, and I have used it and I've got good results also.
Okay, sir. Can we, and Dr. Arunachalam from Nagarkovil has asked whether we can increase the height by special exercises.
This is what everybody will ask you. Okay, if he plays basketball, will the height increase? Or if he is hanging down from the exercise bars, all that is not correct. Any exercise is good, and there are no special exercises. I'm sorry to say there are no special.
No exercises. Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Dr. Nedunjulin wants to know whether if when we have a regular growth monitoring and we can identify the cause at the earliest and have the appropriate intervention, we can achieve the normal growth without administering growth hormone.
Definitely, growth hormone deficiency. You'll have to pick up quite early, and if you treat early, the ultimate results are very good. And there is a study which shows that the sibling of an affected child was picked up earlier and treated from that age itself, instead of the first one who was picked up later. And the first child reached only the 25th centile, whereas the second child, because of continuous treatment, early treatment, became much, much better.
Better. Okay, sir. One question from my side, sir. The right age to start testosterone in CDGP, constitutional lane growth and puberty, 14 years, 15 years, 16 years.
I told you around 12 years also you can start. And it can give them a better start. And but it is only for a few months.
Okay, 3 months, 3 to 6 months, as you said.
And if there is no improvement, I don't think we should continue that. That's why oxandrolone was preferred. When I was working abroad, I was using oxandrolone without the side effects of androgen therapy. It can fuse the bones early. So oxandrolone is much, much better. But
okay, sir. One last question, sir. With your vast experience in children with CKD, chronic kidney disease, how much growth is anticipated with correction of acidosis and anemia, sir?
I can't answer that question because I have not had much experience in that line.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for answering all our questions patiently, sir. We had a real wonderful session. Thank you very much, sir.
Now we sharing the slides.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
How do I stop sharing?
Stop.
You already stopped, sir.
Stop sharing, sir. Now we'll move on to the next session. Anthropometry in Indian children. What is new? All of us would really, we are really anticipating what Dr. Vaman Kadilkar sir is going to talk to us. As we all know, Dr. Vaman Kadilkar